Hi everybody, my name is Nate and you're watching WASD 20. Today I've got a review for you. This is Dungeons & Dragons Art and Arcana, a visual history. So I've got the standard edition here as well as the special edition boxed set, and we're gonna be digging into these things and taking a pretty detailed look, and I'll be telling you all about what I think. So let's get down to it. All right, so here we have it, the long-awaited Art and Arcana by Michael Whitwer, Kyle Newman, John Peterson, and Sam Whitwer. So I've read a couple books from some of these authors before, and I'll just quickly highlight those. Michael Whitwer is the author of Empire of Imagination, Gary Gygax and the Birth of D&D. This is an excellent book that really focuses on the life of Gary Gygax and trying to get inside his head and his, his family life and all this stuff. Really, really good. John Peterson, of course, wrote the seminal work on tabletop role-playing games, Playing at the World. I have not made my way all the way through this thing. It is incredibly dense. It is a highly academic work of history and very, very thorough on all aspects of role-playing games and trying to trace where do we get these things. Although they are not authors of this book, I also will give a quick shout out to Rise of the Dungeon Master and Of Dice and Men, two books. And I'll put a link to a video where I talked about some of these books at the top of the screen here, and you can check that out if you're curious. So, Michael Whitwer, I want to thank him especially. I met him last year at GaryCon, and he was a really, really cool guy. And when I reached out to ask for a review copy of this book, he was happy to oblige. So I'm excited to finally be taking a look here. This right here is the special edition. This one retails for $150, and this standard edition here retails for $50. I think that is a very fair price considering you are getting 430-something pages here. Very thick pages, high quality book. And this one right here, of course, you're paying the collector's price. It is a full box set, and we'll open it up here and take a look. The book's innards are the same, but what are you getting? Well, you're getting this envelope that has some pretty cool stuff in it here we'll take a look at. You get this Tomb of Horrors original 1975 tournament module. So this is not the module that was released to the public. Rather, this is the tournament module that led to an eventual public release of the Tomb of Horrors. And then you've got, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so other posters here. And some of them are really, really old school, stuff like this. And then some of them do get into much more modern works of art, like this one here from 2016 by Chris Ron. A huge beheaded giant. So yeah, it's a really big poster. One that I will probably not be hanging on the wall at my home, unfortunately, but I absolutely love it. I think this might be Keep on the Borderlands here. Yeah. Anyway, lots of cool art here as well. Stuff that you could easily frame for your wall. And then you get to the book itself. So the cover of this box, as well as the cover of the book inside, has art by Hydro74, who has done some of the special edition art for the 5th edition D&D books. And it's an absolutely gorgeous cover. It's got the matte black with metallic gold. But again, the inside of the book is actually just the same, as far as I can tell at least. So we'll be taking a look at the other one as we open it up here and get inside. So here on the standard edition cover, you've got this beautiful piece of art. I believe it's from the Red Box. It's by Larry Elmore, and very nice cover overall. I have no problem whatsoever with the standard edition. I think the collector's edition is beyond what most people will want, given the extra price tag, and that's no problem because this is nice. It's got this nice map on the inside cover here in black and gray. Got some beautiful art to lead us off here. This description helps you understand what this book is. A compiled volume of information and imagery for lovers of Dungeons & Dragons, including art, advertising, ephemera, and more. In case you don't know what ephemera is, it's usually paper collectibles, things that were not meant to be collected necessarily. Like, maybe an opera ticket from 1920 or something like that might be a piece of ephemera. So there's lots of that in here in terms of old ads and little bits and scraps of paper and notes and things. So you're going to find a lot in this book that has never been seen by the public before, and that's one of the things I really like about it. Even though I've read those other books on the history of D&D, it's clear that they've uncovered some new things for this book and are excited to show people. And then you've got the fact that it's a visual history. So here's the table of contents. It is organized by edition, or I guess by chronological order. Not every chapter is an edition here. You've got OD&D first edition, then you've got a chapter on the crash of 1983. Second edition, the fall of TSR, third edition, 3.5 and DDM, fourth edition, fifth edition, and that's it. The foreword is actually written by Joe Manganiello, so that's kind of cool. I enjoyed reading that. And this is an important page for just understanding the basic format of the book, which can be a little confusing sometimes, and you're like, wait, what am I reading here? But keeping this in mind can help. So you've got the story. This is the main text of the book that goes through the history of Dungeons & Dragons. Give you a feel for some of these different sections here. Here's an example of the story, just the regular text of the book. This happens to be talking about the Troubles in the mid-80s. Then you've got archaeology, and archaeology kind of gives you the story behind some of the art. This section here happens to be on the art of Dark Sun, which is of course by Brahm, and is absolutely amazing. I love it. Another archaeology here on the actual inspiration for the Red Box art, in which Larry Elmore tells of a kind of chance encounter that led him to finally figuring out what the higher-ups wanted for this piece of art. An encounter with Gary Gygax himself. A little note about artist favorite stamps that you might see throughout, just showing that this happens to be this artist's favorite piece. And they don't have that for every single artist in the book, I don't think, but they sure have a lot of those sprinkled throughout. Just a little red tag showing that this is the artist's favorite piece. Then you've got Deadliest Dungeons, so D&D is a game of dungeons, it says, so of course you've got some of the more iconic dungeons featured throughout, and they have separate kind of breakout sections on those. This one is on the Tomb of Horrors. This is the actual photos from the tournament that Gary Gygax ran at, I believe it was at Gen Con, but I'm not totally sure. No, it's actually the inaugural Origins convention. So yeah, really cool original map here of the Tomb of Horrors, some of the original art. Then you've got Evolution, which is the same pretty much as the Many Faces of. It just, Evolution is going to cover types of monsters, whereas Many Faces of will cover specific characters or specific villains. So here's Evolution of the Mind Flayer, just showing the changes in the art for Mind Flayers over the years. I like those sections a lot. They're fun to see. And then you've also got these sections, the Many Faces of. So some of these might be a hero. I think there's one on Drizzt, for example. But this one happens to be on Demigorgon, the Demon Lord. And really cool to see the starting to the ending here. And overall, yeah, the art has gotten a lot better over the years. So really fun to see the evolution of, owlbears and beholders and all these monsters that we've come to love. And lastly, you've got sections on Sundry Lore. So Sundry Lore is going to be focusing on a very specific aspect of the history of this hobby. So Gen Con here, a couple pages just all about Gen Con. And then you've got another one over here that's all about the Infinity Engine. So kind of covering sometimes the maybe fringe topics, a little bit tangential to the main game of Dungeons & Dragons, but still cool to kind of dive into those different aspects of the game. A couple points of criticism I'll just mention about this is that there are a lot of pieces of art that are cut across the spine, and it's hard to see what is being represented in some of them. This one right here, for example, it's a little bit hard to see what's going on in there, and I wish I could peel it apart more, but I can't. Another example was in that Tomb of Horrors page that I showed you earlier. Just a little bit hard to tell what's going on here in the spine, but overall not bad. That's a very minor nitpick in the grand scheme of things. Another nitpick is that sometimes it's a little bit hard to tell what's going on because you've got all these different sections. I'll flip to a page and I'll easily get lost in kind of, looking at an image and reading the captions and what am I supposed to read first? And maybe that's just the nature of these kinds of books, and overall it's well worth it. But it's a little bit hard when you've got caption, you've got some text from the story, and then you've got this text right here, and it's just like, am I reading an ad? What am I reading here? Is this an original piece? Or right here, you know, you've got this, and this kind of looks like it could be an ad in a magazine. But then I start reading this and I realize, oh, this is the authors speaking here. This is not text in an ad. And over time, you do kind of get used to that. But at first, it was a little disorienting and hard to tell, what am I reading here? Before I share some of my final thoughts here, I just want to flip through a few more pages and give you guys a look at more here. It's really tempting to want to just flip through every single page here, but you should really just get this book and do that yourself and curl up on the couch and just marvel at the beauty herein. Art, ads, miniatures, just all kinds of stuff, maps. Check out this Ed Greenwood original hand-drawn map of the Forgotten Realms. Really cool. Sword Coast. There's the Drizzt one. Ravenloft. Some of this Planescape art is amazing. All the settings here. Look at that amazing art. So gorgeous. Looks like we're getting into 3rd edition here. Eberron. Cool hand-drawn map there. Original dungeon, I got to see that thing in person at GaryCon. And we're getting into 5th edition here. Strahd. Beautiful map by Jared Blando. There's a couple of those in here. Tiamat 1st edition Monster Manual versus 5th edition. So one of the things that this book does is it gets really current and reflects on the current stuff going on, whether that's Kickstarter or Twitch streaming. It covers it all here. And I do love the inclusion of this. I do wish they had put it right next to this one here. I think that would have been cool, but cool that they do have both. Last thing I'll show you here before you see a bit more of me is this awesome spread that shows all the covers of the core books throughout the various editions, from original Dungeons & Dragons all the way up to 5th editions. So yeah, I thought this page was pretty great. So in case you can't already tell, I absolutely love this book and I cannot recommend it enough. I think the fact that it's a visual history is just so appropriate for a game like Dungeons & Dragons, which is such a visual game. Whether it's the maps or the miniatures or just the art itself. I mean, the art itself from the very beginning was used to give cues to players about the types of things you could do in this game, about the types of creatures you would encounter, about the types of worlds you were adventuring in. And that's such a huge part of the game that to now include that in its history, I think is a great gift. In some of the other D&D history books that I mentioned, I often found myself reading about things, reading about, you know, a controversial cover or a certain artist or art style or a certain map, a certain module, and I would often find myself just running over to the computer to do a Google image search about this thing that I was reading about. And with this book, you don't have to do that. It's all right there in beautiful, sometimes full page, full color illustrations. And it's amazing. So if you're a total newcomer to this hobby, I think it's a great way to go if you want to learn more about the history and want to just marvel at how far this game has come over the years and understand its roots a little better. And if you're a longtime gamer, I think you will absolutely enjoy the trip down memory lane that I'm sure this book will be for you. You'll probably see some things that you haven't seen in years that you had forgotten about completely. And I think it'll be a great experience for old and new alike. The book is called Art and Arcana, and there is a fair amount of history of the art of this game, but there's also a lot of general history and new bits of info that I hadn't heard before, even after reading several books on the history of tabletop role-playing games. So personally, I think this book gives us the best D&D experience so far. If I had to pick one, I don't know, I can't pick a favorite child. I love all these books that I've mentioned, but I really, really love this one. And I think that more than with any of the others, I was just surprised and delighted at every turn of the page as I took this trip through the history of this game that I love so much. So I definitely recommend you check it out. If you're interested, there is an Amazon link in the video description, and buying through those links is a great way that you can support this channel. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, I would love to have you as a subscriber. And lastly, I want to thank my patrons so much for their support. Patrons are people who give to this channel on a monthly basis. Even $1 or $2 a month can add up to make a big difference for me and helping me pay the bills around here. So I would greatly appreciate you checking it out. There's some cool rewards, and I'll be actually revising the rewards this coming November to add some other cool stuff. Thanks everybody very much for joining me. Go get your copy of Art and Arcana. You will not regret it. And everybody take care. You'll see me again very soon. Absolutely adore the trip down memory lane that I'm sure this book will be for you, as well as the special limited edition box set. There we go. I got it.